Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to ask a question. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out today's sponsor, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. Don't waste hours trying to find the best buy list price for your cards online. Simply send them to Card Conduit and let them take care of the rest. I have used Card Conduit multiple times already. I always use them to get the best value for my extra cards. I get fair prices for my cards and they save me tons of time. They have 3 main services. Their standard service lets you send them your unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. They give you the best price for your cards. They work with competitive buy listing partners, including ones not open to the public. Users get an average of 19% more for their collection than they would from any major retail buy list, even with Card Conduit's fees. Card Conduit also optimizes buy listing for card condition as well. Since vendors have different penalties for wear and tear, Card Conduit will find the best buy list priced against the specific condition of the card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off of their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Sean piloting Borborygmos and Fibblethip. This is a teamer mid-range deck that tries to assemble Breach or Neoform lines to win the game. Sean's opening hand contains a Lightning Bolt, Mindbreak Trap, Lion's Eye Diamond, City of Brass, Mox Diamond, Rejuvenating Springs, and a Polluted Delta. Next, we have Ryan piloting the partner pair of Tymna the Weaver and Jeska Thrice Reborn. Forever known as Dommy Mommies, this Mad Farm list looks to resolve ad nauseum and bury the opponents with card advantage. Ryan's opening hand contains a Drannith Magistrate, Cathar Commando, Blood Crypt, Cabal Ritual, Godless Shrine, Scalding Tarn, and his London Mulligan is a Flooded Strand. After that, we have Andrew piloting Najeela the Blade Blossom. This is a 5-color deck that can win via various lines with or without its commander. Andrew's opening hand contains an Underworld Breach, Exotic Orchard, Dark Ritual, Jeweled Lotus, Ad Nauseam, Mystic Remora, and his London Mulligan is a Demonic Consultation. Finally, we have Brandon piloting Marwyn the Nurturer. This deck seeks to use elves to pump its commander, gain a lot of mana, and then cast a game-ending effect. Brandon's opening hand contains a Gemstone Caverns, Soul's Majesty, Leaf Crowned Visionary, Ancient Tomb, Fido Burst, Soul Ring, and his London Mulligan is a Forest. Without further ado, let's kick off this cromulent conundrum of chaotic commanders. Sean revealed the highest mana value card off of the Dan deck and gets to start us off. But Brandon has a pre-game action and puts Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Leaf Crowned Visionary. Sean draws a card for turn and casts a Mox Diamond, discarding Rejuvenating Springs. He casts a Lion's Eye Diamond. He plays a Polluted Delta for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. Off to a fast start, Sean ends his turn. Ryan draws, plays a Scalding Tarn, and passes. Andrew draws and plays an Exotic Orchard. He casts a Mystic Remora. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. He sacrifices his Lotus to help cast his commander, Najeela the Blade Blossom. In response, Sean casts Mindbreak Trap for its alternate cost targeting Najeela. Remora triggers and Andrew draws. Bemoaning his sequencing, Najeela is exiled to the command zone. Andrew casts Mana Crypt and then ships the turn to Brandon. Brandon draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. He taps his Ancient Tomb to help cast a Soul Ring. Remora triggers and Andrew draws. He then casts his commander, Marwyn the Nurturer. Brandon moves to his end step and Sean, displaying an equal disdain for all commanders, casts Lightning Bolt targeting Marwyn. Remora triggers and Andrew draws. Then Bolt kills Marwyn and the turn moves to Sean. Sean draws and plays a Wooded Foothills. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Taiga onto the battlefield. He sacrifices his LED, discards his hand, and adds 3 blue. He casts his commander, Borborygmos and Fibblethip. In response, Ryan cracks his Scalding Tarn, pays a life, and fetches up a Plateau onto the battlefield. Ryan, having previously stated that he will attempt to counter anything that uses LED as a cost, casts Pyroblast, targeting Sean's commander. Remora triggers and Andrew draws. Sean can do nothing but sigh, and Borborygmos and Fibblethip is countered. A dejected Sean places it into the command zone and passes to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Blood Crypt into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts a Drannith Magistrate. He ends his turn. During Andrew's upkeep, Remora and Mana Crypt trigger. He wins his Mana Crypt flip, and then with a Remora trigger on the stack, he casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. He then casts Ad Nauseam. The table is out of interaction, and Ad Naus resolves. Andrew reveals a Command Tower, Drannith Magistrate, Mental Misstep, Taiga, Tropical Island, Plateau, Ranger Captain of Eos, Talisman of Dominance, Flusterstorm, Imperial Seal, Red Elemental Blast, Chrome Mox, Underground Sea, Pact of Negation, Mana Vault, Misty Rainforest, Flooded Strand, Mox Opal, Scalding Tarn, Marsh Flats, Grim Hireling, Verdant Catacombs, Scrubland, Intuition, City of Traders, Felwar Stone, Arcane Signet, Tainted Pact, Mystical Tutor, Savannah, Veil of Summer, Ignoble Hierarch, Mindbreak Trap, Savine's Reclamation, and a Jataxian Probe, deciding to stop there. Then Andrew lets his Remora die. He draws for turn and casts a Mox Opal. He casts a Chrome Mox, imprinting Fierce Guardianship. He plays a City of Traders. He casts a Mana Vault. He casts an Arcane Signet. He casts Talisman of Dominance. He taps his Talisman to help cast Thassa's Oracle. Oracle enters, and with the trigger on the stack, Andrew casts Tainted Pact, exiling his library. Oracle's trigger resolves, and Andrew wins the game. In this game, Ryan's opening hand contains a Deflecting Swat, City of Brass, Mox Opal, Scrubland, Flooded Strand, Soul Ring, and a Wheel of Fortune. Andrew's opening hand contains a Wooded Foothills, Taiga, Dreneth Magistrate, Diabolic Intent, Veil of Summer, Force of Will, and a Gemstone Caverns. Brandon's opening hand contains a Wirewood Symbiote, Embiggen, Scale Up, Forest, Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal, and an Invasion of Ikoria. Sean's opening hand contains a Llanowar Elves, Breeding Pool, Training Center, Lightning Bolt, Lotus Petal, Rhystic Study, and his London Mulligan is a Helm of the Host. And Ryan gets to start us off. But Andrew has a pre-game action and puts Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Taiga. Ryan draws and plays a City of Brass. He casts a Mox Opal. He taps a City of Brass to cast a Soul Ring. He casts a Grim Monolith. He casts a Wheel of Fortune, drawing groans from the other three players. Everyone discards their hand and draws 7. Off to a fast start, Ryan ends his turn. Andrew draws and plays a Scrubland. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts his commander, Najeela the Blade Blossom. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts Felwar Stone. He casts Ragavan, Nimble Pilfer. Having taken full advantage of the wheel, Andrew passes. Brandon draws and plays a Forest. He casts a Soul Ring. He ships the turn to Sean. Sean draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Taiga onto the battlefield. He casts his own Ragavan, Nimble Pilfer. Sean ends his turn. Ryan draws and casts Gamble. He fetches up a card into his hand and then randomly discards Mana Confluence. He taps the City of Brass to cast Dark Ritual, adding 3 black. And then he casts, surprise, Ad Nauseam. Ad Naus resolves, and Ryan reveals an Arid Mesa, Vanishing Verse, Calling the Weak, Blood Crypt, Tainted Pact, Lotus Petal, Grinding Station, Dockside Extortionist, Imperial Seal, Saw in Half, Diabolic Intent, Dualcaster Mage, Archivist of Ogma, Twin Flame, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Phyrexian Tower, Touch the Spirit Realm, Silence, Lion's Eye Diamond, Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff, Imperial Recruiter, Infernal Plunge, Rite of Flame, and an Underworld Breach, deciding against suicide and stopping there. Ryan exiles Simian Spirit Guide from his hand, adding a red. He casts Rite of Flame, adding 2 red. He casts Underworld Breach. He casts Lion's Eye Diamond. He casts a Lotus Petal, and then immediately cracks it to cast Silence, so as to not have anyone disrupt his power trip. He cracks his LED, discards his hand, and adds 3 red. He escapes Dragon's Rage Channeler. He escapes his LED. Darcy triggers, Ryan surveils, putting Cavern of Souls into his graveyard. He then cracks his LED, adding 3 red. He escapes Twin Flame, targeting Darcy. Darcy triggers, Ryan surveils, putting Lightning Bolt into his graveyard. Holding priority, Ryan escapes Dualcaster Mage. It enters, triggers, and targets Twin Flame. Twin Flame is copied, and Ryan targets Dualcaster Mage with the copy. Ryan presents a loop of copying Dualcaster with the Twin Flame copy, then using Dualcaster's ability to create another copy of Twin Flame to target Dualcaster. He then creates an infinite number of hasty tokens. Ryan moves to combat and sends his Agent Smith army at everyone, and Ryan wins the game. In this game, Andrew is piloting the partner pair of Tymna the Weaver and Dargo the Shipwrecker. This is a turbo deck that looks to land either Ad Nauseam or Rolus' Citadel while maintaining card advantage via Tymna. Andrew's opening hand contains a Magna Brazen Outlaw, Polluted Delta, Jeweled Lotus, and his 4 London Mulligans are Necropotence, Red Elemental Blast, Jeska's Will, and Bergi, God of Storytelling. Brandon is piloting the partner pair of Tymna the Weaver and Crom Ludovic's Opus. Famously known as Blue Farm, this is a 4-color good stuff deck filled with powerful cards, achieving victory via Thassa's Oracle or Underworld Breach. Brandon's opening hand contains a Windswept Heath, Esper Sentinel, Silence, Cyclonic Rift, Wheel of Fortune, Mental Misstep, and his London Mulligan is a Ranger Captain of Eos. Sean brings back Borborygmos and Fibblethip, and his opening hand contains a Boseiju Who Endures, Rejuvenating Springs, Flusterstorm, Lotus Petal, Brain Freeze, an Offer You Can't Refuse, and a Rite of Flame. Ryan brings back Tymna and Jeska, and his opening hand contains a Spectator Seeding, Gemstone Caverns, Wheel of Fortune, Imperial Seal, Arcane Signet, Saw in Half, and a Lotus Petal. And Andrew gets to start us off. But, stop me if you've heard this before, Ryan has a pre-game action and puts Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Saw in Half. Andrew draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Badlands onto the battlefield. He casts Jeweled Lotus. He cracks his Lotus to help cast his commander, Tymna the Weaver. Andrew ends his turn. Brandon draws and plays a Windswept Heath. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Tundra onto the battlefield. He casts Esper Sentinel. Brandon passes. Sean draws and plays a Rejuvenating Springs. He casts a Lotus Petal, paying the Esper tax. He cracks his Lotus Petal to cast Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. Sean ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Spectator Seeding. He casts a Lotus Petal. Esper Sentinel triggers and Brandon draws. Ryan then casts Deja Vu, Wheel of Fortune, although this time the table is not so depressed at the turn of events. Each player discards their hand and draws 7. Ryan casts Lion's Eye Diamond and ends his turn. Andrew draws and plays a Gemstone Caverns. He casts a Lotus Petal, paying the Esper tax. He cracks his Lotus Petal to help cast Drannith Magistrate. In response, Brandon casts Force of Will, paying a life, exiling a blue card, countering Drannith. Andrew moves to combat and attacks Ryan with Tymna. Ryan takes it and Andrew gains 2. In his second main phase, he pays a life and draws a card through Tymna. All through, Andrew passes. Brandon draws and plays an Ottawara, Soaring City. He casts an Arcane Signet. He ends his turn. Sean draws and plays a Gaia's Cradle. He moves to combat and attacks Andrew with Ragavan. Andrew takes it, Ragavan triggers, Sean creates a treasure, and Andrew exiles City of Traders off of the top of its library. In his second main phase, Sean casts Talisman of Impulse. Esper Sentinel triggers and Brandon draws. All through, Sean ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Humid as it enters. Holding mana open, he ends his turn. Andrew draws, and the table celebrates finally being able to make it to turn 3 this evening. Andrew moves to combat and attacks Ryan with Tymna. Ryan takes it, and Andrew gains 2. In his second main phase, Andrew pays a life and draws a card through Tymna. He plays a Wooded Foothills for turn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Plateau onto the battlefield. He casts Mayhem Devil. All through, Andrew ends his turn. Brandon draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He cracks it, paying a life. Mayhem Devil triggers, and Andrew targets Esper Sentinel, killing it. Brandon then fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. He casts Rite of Flame, adding 3 red due to the Rite of Flame in Sean's graveyard. Brandon then casts Windfall. In response, Sean casts Force of Negation for its alternate cost, exiling a blue card, countering and exiling Windfall. Next, Brandon casts Ranger Captain of Eos. Ranger Captain enters, and Brandon fetches up a Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer into his hand. He passes. At the end of Brandon's turn, Sean casts Worldly Tutor. He fetches up a Phyrexian Metamorph onto the top of his library. The turn moves to Sean. Sean draws and moves to combat. He attacks Ryan with Ragavan. Ryan takes it, Ragavan triggers, Sean creates a treasure, and Ryan exiles a Luxury Suite. In his second main phase, Sean cracks a treasure, adding a blue. Mayhem Devil triggers, and Andrew targets Ragavan, killing it. Sean then pays 2 life to cast Phyrexian Metamorph. It enters as a copy of Ranger Captain of Eos. Metamorph Captain triggers, and Sean fetches up a Delighted Halfling into his hand. He casts Delighted Halfling. All through, Sean passes. At the end of Sean's turn, Ryan flashes in a Cathar Commando. The turn moves to Ryan. Ryan draws and casts Lotho, Corrupt Sheriff. He plays a Scalding Tarn. He passes to Andrew. Andrew draws and casts Esper Sentinel. He casts Imperial Seal. Lotho triggers, and Ryan loses a life and creates a treasure. Seal resolves, and Andrew fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. He passes. Brandon draws and casts Mnemonic Betrayal. Esper Sentinel triggers, and Andrew draws. In response, Sean activates Ranger Captain of Eos, sacrificing it. Mayhem Devil triggers, and Andrew targets Lotho, killing it. Then Ranger Captain's ability resolves, locking out Sean's opponents this turn. Then Betrayal resolves, exiling all of Brandon's opponents' graveyards. Brandon looks at his options and decides that he did like the Lotho after all. He casts Ryan's Lotho from exile. Unable to do anything else, Brandon passes to Sean, and the exiled cards are returned to their graveyards. Sean draws and cracks a treasure, adding a red. Mayhem Devil triggers, and Andrew targets Lotho, killing it again. Sean then casts his commander, Borborygmos and Fibblethip. It enters, and Sean draws and chooses not to discard. He plays a Training Center and ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Phyrexian Tower. He casts Imperial Recruiter. It enters, and Ryan fetches up a Serra Ascendant into his hand. He cracks a treasure, adding a white. Mayhem Devil triggers, and Andrew has it deal 1 damage to Ryan. Ryan then casts Serra Ascendant. All through, Ryan ends his turn. Andrew draws and casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters, and Andrew creates 3 treasures. With nothing else, Andrew passes to Brandon. Brandon draws and casts his commander, Crom, Ludovic's Opus. He moves to combat and attacks Andrew with Crom. Andrew takes it, and Brandon ends his turn. Sean draws and also goes straight to combat. He attacks Brandon with Borborygmos and Fibblethip. It triggers, Sean draws, and decides not to discard. Brandon takes it, and in his second main phase, Sean casts Gamble, paying the Esper tax. He fetches up a card into his hand and then randomly discards a Chrome Mox. He casts the One Ring. Crom triggers, and Brandon draws. The One Ring enters, and Sean gains protection from everything until his next turn. He taps the One Ring, adding a burning counter and drawing a card. The turn moves to Ryan. Ryan draws and plays a Blood Crypt, into play tapped. He casts Talisman of Indulgence, paying the Esper tax. He moves to combat and attacks Brandon with Serra Ascendant. Brandon takes 6, and Ryan gains 6. In his second main phase, Ryan cracks his Scalding Tarn, paying a life. Mayhem Devil triggers, and Andrew targets Cathar Commando. In response, Ryan activates Cathar Commando, destroying Esper Sentinel. Then Ryan fetches up a Plateau onto the battlefield. Ryan attempts to move through phases, and in response, Andrew cracks a treasure for a white. Mayhem Devil triggers, and Andrew pings Brandon for 1. Andrew then channels Touch the Spirit Realm, exiling Dockside Extortionist. Ryan moves to his end step, and Dockside re-enters the battlefield. With the Dockside trigger on the stack, Ryan casts Enlightened Tutor. Crom triggers, and Brandon draws. Tutor resolves, and Ryan fetches up a Mana Crypt onto the top of his library. Then the Dockside trigger resolves, and Andrew creates 5 treasures. The turn moves to Andrew. During Andrew's upkeep, Brandon, wary of the resources that Andrew has accumulated, activates Ranger Captain of Eos, sacrificing it. Mayhem Devil triggers and Andrew pings Brandon for 1. Then Ranger Captain's ability resolve, locking out Brandon's opponents from casting non-creature spells this turn. Andrew draws and cracks 3 of his treasures. Mayhem Devil triggers 3 times, dealing 3 to Crom. He casts his commander, Dargo the Shipwrecker. He casts Ruthless Technomancer. Crom triggers and Brandon draws. Technomancer enters and Andrew sacrifices Dargo, creating 7 treasures and sending Dargo to the command zone. He cracks another treasure for a red. Mayhem Devil triggers and Andrew targets Crom, killing it. He recasts Dargo, sacrificing Dockside as an additional cost. Mayhem Devil triggers and Andrew targets Brandon. Andrew then cracks another treasure for black, triggering Mayhem Devil and targeting Sean's commander. Andrew activates Technomancer's ability, sacrificing a treasure and targeting Dockside in his graveyard. Mayhem Devil triggers and Andrew targets Sean's commander again. Dockside returns to the battlefield and Andrew creates 5 treasures. He cracks 3 treasures for 3 black, triggering Mayhem Devil 3 times. He targets Dockside with 2 of the triggers and Sean's commander with 1 trigger. Dockside dies and then Andrew activates Technomancer again. He sacrifices another treasure, targeting Dockside in his graveyard. Mayhem Devil triggers, and Andrew pings Ryan. Andrew presents a loop of sacrificing treasures to kill Dockside with Mayhem Devil, then activating Technomancer's ability to return Dockside to the battlefield. With each loop, Andrew nets 1 treasure and 2 Mayhem Devil triggers. In order to maintain his Dockside count, Andrew kills his opponent's creatures first. He then pings Ryan and Brandon back and forth, being careful not to kill them. He accumulates as many treasures as he can before finishing them both off. And, since Sean has protection with the One Ring, Andrew has to pass the turn. During Sean's upkeep, and no longer protected under the One Ring, Andrew sacrifices treasures, pings Sean to death through Mayhem Devil, and Andrew wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great set of games tonight. Congrats to Andrew and Ryan on their wins. Games 1 and 2 show the power of ad nauseum, which has been showed, well, ad nauseum over the lifetime of this channel. The fact that one spell can put essentially your whole deck into your hand is incredibly powerful, and the 2 quick finishes show just how quickly everything can come to an end. In Game 3, Andrew navigated around interaction and managed to pull off the winning line while being locked out by Ranger Captain of Eos, and that is no easy feat in CEDH. The most valuable card in tonight's games, sponsored by Luxury Playstyle, goes to Mayhem Devil. Taking full advantage of the plethora of sacrifice effects in a CEDH game, Mayhem Devil completely controlled the board. After grinding out value, it even acted as the kill shot for Andrew to wrap up the game. Not bad for an unassuming 3-drop. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time and we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.